Tonight, I drunk. I knew.
Hey there, YouTube. SkepticalRoot. More counter-apologetics. Going back to peterkreeft.com, www.peterkreeft.com. Argument number 15, the argument from conscience. We're going to tackle that here in a minute. Just switching up a little bit from the social commentary, and I've done a lot of politics yet, but I'm kind of winding down in some of the topics I was going to talk about. I do still have some things to talk about for social commentary, but I figured I'd mix it up a little bit, jump back to the counter-apologetics with a strange one, I think. Excuse me. So the argument from conscience basically boils down to this idea that our conscience is something that we all trust and believe in at all times and never violate our own conscience. I would argue, of course, that this is incorrect, that we violate our conscience all the time. If we didn't, there would be no such thing as this concept of regret that we have. But let me go through here and read off from the website basically what the argument here is, and we'll take it from there. So, since moral subjectivism is very popular today, the following version of it, or twist to the moral argument, should be effective since it does not presuppose moral objectivism. Modern people often say they believe that there is no universally binding moral obligations, that we must all follow our own private conscience. But that very admission is enough of a premise to prove the existence of God. Isn't it remarkable that no one, even the most consistent subjectivist, believes that it is ever good for anyone to deliberately and knowingly disobey his or her own conscience? Well, that's not true. Even if different people's consciences tell them to do or avoid totally different things, there remains one moral absolute for everyone. Never disobey your own conscience. Well, that's not true. People violate their own conscience all the time. But I will continue. Now, where did conscience get such an absolute authority? Again, I've already stated, I should say, that it's not an absolute authority. There would be no regret if people always trusted their conscience and always did what their conscience said. An authority admitted even by the moral subjectivists and relativists. There are only four possibilities. Four possibilities, four possible reasons for how this could have achieved absolute authority. Number one, from something less than me. And in parentheses, I say nature. I, of course, would argue that we are part of nature, and nature would not be less than us. Number two, from me as an individual. Not me in particular, but me as the speaker, the person. You get what I'm saying. Okay. Sure, if we are going to try to stand up to whatever moral or ethical values we believe in ourselves by trying to achieve this particular ideal, we will look at ourselves as an absolute authority, knowing that we will fail. Believing that we won't, but knowing that we will. Three, from others equal to me. And in their reference here, they're talking about a societal group, I should say. They say society, I say any kind of group. Number four, from something above me, and in their parentheses here, it's God. I can concede that the first three things actually exist. I can't conceive of something above me, per se, that would make my conscience an absolute authority. Again, and this goes back to the objection that I have to objective morals in the first place, one of them, which is that they're not absolute objectives. They're subjective objectives. They are goals, they are ideas, they are asymptotes upon which we strive to achieve the value of 4 on an x-square graph. But we don't ever quite get there. We get there at infinity. The website says, let's consider each of these possibilities in order. Number 1, going back to the from something less than me. How can I be absolutely obligated by something less than me? For example, by animal instinct or practical need for material survival. Well, without practical need for material survival, we're dead. And there's no conscience if we're dead. But people are often led by animal instinct, making emotional decisions, having that extra piece of cake, or sleeping with that person, or deciding that we are too busy to help the person pick up their dropped groceries. You know, our conscience would tell us that we're good people and we should do these things, or we're honorable people, so we shouldn't do something else, but we do them anyway because instinctually we do them. We allow those things to override our conscience in the first place, all the time, because we are part of nature. That's instinctually what we do. It is our rational centers that tell us, okay, don't eat all the candy. You know, we're programmed kind of to seek out sugars and sweets because they're calorie dense and they tend to have good nutrients and they tend to be beneficial for our survival. But that doesn't mean that we should eat, you know, we should raid the store at Cinnabon at the airport or the mall. Some malls have Cinnabons, believe it or not. And just eat there all the time. So, number 2, how can I obligate myself? Absolutely. Again, why would you obligate yourself? Absolutely. There aren't absolutes in this case. They're subjective goals or subjective objective goals. Am I absolute? Do I have the right to demand absolute obedience from anyone, even myself? Well, no. Conscience isn't necessarily obedient to anyone or anything. Conscience is our desire to follow particular ideals. It's not an absolute something. The ideal may be absolute, but it's asymptotic. Achieving perfection in that is impossible. Impossible. And if I am the one who locked myself in this prison of obligation, I can also let myself out, thus destroying the absoluteness of the obligation which we admitted as our premise. Well, I disagree with the premise for other reasons. But that is also true. But it's still back to what decisions we make about it. Number 3, how can society obligate me? What right do my equals have to impose their values on me? What quantity, or does quantity make quality? Do a million human beings make a relative into an absolute? Is society God? No. Society isn't God. Let's take these backwards. A million human beings don't make a relative into an absolute. Quantity does not make quality. What right do my equals have to impose their values on me? And how can society obligate me? Okay. As a member of the group, we allow the group to make certain decisions on our behalf as we agree to make certain decisions on the behalf of others. We agree to rules that we play by in order to be part of this group. Let's say it's a simpler example. It's a chess club, okay? And everybody in the group agrees that they're going to play chess. And they're going to follow the rules of chess, and they're going to follow certain rule books versions of chess rules, and that's it. They're going to play a certain type of chess or certain types of chess, and that's going to be what the chess club does. When somebody brings in checkers, they're not going to want to have that person be part of the group anymore. That person is also kind of abdicating some of their responsibility to the group by wanting to do something other than play chess. So the other members in the group have every right to say, you shouldn't be doing that. And this is a statist argument. Don't get me wrong. I am probably pro-state. Yeah. All right, I'm a statist. Fine. But it's because we have allowed ourselves to be part of that group and are providing conditional obligation to the group to monitor us as we monitor them. So it is by our choice that we allow the society or the state or the group or however you want to phrase this to obligate me. I have chosen, and if I choose not to, I can walk away. And I don't have to be part of that group anymore, and then that group no longer has any authority over me. Only as I'm part of that group can it be part of me. Can I be part of it? And can they have authority over me? If I don't want to follow the drunk driving laws in the United States, I can move to somewhere in Micronesia. Perhaps they don't have DUI laws over there. I don't know. But then they won't be subjected to American rules or obligations. So number 4, the only source of absolute moral obligation left is something superior to me, that this binds my will morally with the rightful demands for complete obedience. And that's not true. Obviously, it's not the only source of it might be the only source of absolute moral obligation. But that only goes to show that there isn't a source of absolute moral obligation. There has to be a God. There has to be shown to be a God. If there were physical evidence that could only be explained by the existence of God out there, this might make sense. Number 4. But it doesn't, because it's not. We also know that there is no absolute moral obligation. We violate our conscience all the time. And sometimes you don't even feel bad about it. It gets even better here, though. It says, thus God, or something like God, is the only adequate source and ground for the absolute moral obligations that we feel and obey in our conscience. Conscience is thus explainable only as the voice of God in our soul. The 10 Commandments are 10 divine footprints in our psychic sand. And then it breaks off into this addendum on religion and morality, which I'm not going to go into because it's tangential to this particular argument. But this is dumb. First off, 10 Commandments? Really? When would I ever feel, in a totally secular aspect of it, the first 3 commandments make no sense for anybody. I would say of the remaining 7, 3 of them don't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I shouldn't covet my neighbor's goods. Why? Why can't I look at his things and want them? Doing something about it. I mean, it's not the taking them part that's against the commandment. Oh, wait. Now we're talking about the other 10 commandments. Hold on. I don't remember all those ones. I do remember not to boil a baby goat in its mother's milk. Yeah, that doesn't fit in with the moral obligations of my conscience either. Other than how would you get enough milk to boil a baby goat in it? I mean, they don't make that much milk. It has to be a really little baby. You probably have to save up the milk for days or weeks or months to have enough to boil the baby goat in it. How would you keep it from going bad? I mean, that's just a practical, relatively speaking, practical impossibility in the Bronze Age period when that was written. That's just dumb. Maybe it was supposed to be. Maybe that's biblical trolling. Who knows? But that's it. That's my explanation of the argument from conscience. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Pass it on to your friends. I will have all 20 of these at some point. I think this is the 6th one I've done. So, 14 more to go. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and hello, as always.
If it doesn't